Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Please stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. Call our meeting to order. We'll begin with approval of minutes for January 31st and February 4th. We can do them together or separate. It's your pleasure. Thoughts, comments?
I'll make a motion to approve both sets of minutes.
I have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion to approve both? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. 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 Thank you. Next, Commissioner reports and comments. Vice President Baker, would you begin?
We did have the Parks and Rec meeting this past week, and we had some presentations by three municipalities, Boonesboro, Hancock, and Smithsburg. And the board will, I guess, they'll deliberate over those projects and work with our staff to make sure what each municipality could possibly receive, I guess, in total dollars, and then make decisions after all of the municipalities bring their request in.
Terry, pardon the interruption. Have they given us a total dollar value amount that we have this year? Do you know offhand?
They have, but I would ask Andrew to give you the accurate amount.
1.1.
Okay, 1.1.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, and that concludes my comments.
Commissioner Kiefer, comments, please?
Nothing at this time.
Commissioner Wagner?
Morning. Attended Clear Spring Ambulance Awards banquet. Very nice banquet up at Trackside. Trackside was a great host. Delegate McKay was there and handed out the achievement awards for how many years. I think somebody had, it was 50 or maybe even 60. So that was a nice event. Also went out to Farney Keedy for their 115th year anniversary or celebration. We called it their birthday. It was another nice event. It was a pretty good showing, and there seems like a well-run organization. Met with the state fire marshal one evening. They were just talking about the sprinkler systems and putting in some new bills for that in Maryland. So more to come on that. I think that's it for me.
Thank you. Commissioner Schmidt is out of town today and sends his regards for his absence. I too attended the Smithsburg Volunteer Fire Company. Commissioner Baker did as well. It was another great event recognizing the volunteers and the services that they do. And I did attend the 115th birthday party for Farney Keedy. Several of us have some familiarity with that facility. My great-grandmother was there in the mid-1960s. My mom took me every Sunday along with her because I think she was afraid to leave me home with my older brothers. But the facility has from daycare for adult dementia or Alzheimer's to their memory care unit. They've really expanded, and it's a great facility and asset to Washington County. That being said, that concludes my reports. I would like to go to reports from county staff. Those in the front row, county staff.
Hello, my name is Bud Goodmanson. I'm the GIS manager in the GIS office in the IT department. Also here is Brian Albert, operations manager in emergency services, and Jennifer Kinzer, GIS coordinator in the planning and zoning department. We'd like to give you an update on the Next Generation 911 initiative. You may remember from a few past presentations about Next Gen 911, bringing 911 into the 21st century. This initiative will be in two phases. Phase 1 will include a countywide update of addresses and numbering to improve location accuracy for emergency responders. Phase 2 will be the implementation of new technology infrastructure for 911. NextGen 911 is a national movement to update 911 technology. This update will allow emergency communicators to receive voice, photos, videos, and text messages. It will also improve the ability to help manage call overload, natural disasters, and transferring of 911 calls to proper jurisdictional responses based on location tracking. Phase 1 is underway now. The GIS office and the planning department are involved in this effort because we assign addresses and maintain the address maps for the county. These are currently in the 911 software systems, but for NextGen 911, the address maps will be the primary source for the location of callers and dispatch of first responders. Therefore, we're going through a process to upgrade the accuracy and eliminate any errors and points of confusion or conflict. The county will be holding informational meetings in each town and/or fire district for citizens that are impacted with an address update. These updates will begin at the end of February and will occur throughout the duration of the year. We've completed a pilot area in Leitersburg last year and are now starting full bore in Hancock. We work closely with local fire and EMS companies to find problem areas and inform the public of the absolute need for these corrections. Out of a total of 2,012 addresses, we need to change 183 addresses in the Hancock Fire District, 128 in the town and 55 in the county. We sent out 223 letters to tenants and owners last week. We are asking them to respond so we know they received them, and for those who don't, we will send registered letters. We will hold a town hall meeting in Hancock on the 25th of this month to answer questions the residents might have. Emergency services personnel and the local fire and EMS personnel will be there as well. The PR staff has started a campaign to get the word out, including a video to help educate the public and the need for this, as well as important information to give 911 call takers when calling for help. We need to make sure that they say the name of the town that they are calling from in addition to their address. Even though the technology is getting better, we always need to get good information from the callers themselves. You may receive calls or emails from constituents about what's going on, and you can refer them to the PR staff, the planning staff, the GIS office, or the emergency services staff. And we wanted to give you that update, and we'll take any questions you have.
That meeting is the 25th at what time?
At
5 to 7.
5 o'clock?
At the town hall.
So we'll be there to answer residents' questions and explain the need in their particular case.
Hey, Commissioners, any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other reports from county staff? Please come forward. Name and your matter, please.
Good morning, Rachel Brown, Human Resources Director, and I'm requesting an official vote for a recommendation to hire for the Quality Assurance and Training Coordinator in the Division of Emergency Services. This is a grade 13, step 11 position with an annual salary of $65,437. The reason for the vacancy is the retirement of Ardonna Woods. It's a full-time budgeted position. We advertised internally. We had 6 applicants, and we interviewed 6 applicants. And we recommend Shelby Hall to the position of Quality Assurance and Training Coordinator. In the selecting of Shelby J. Hall, she, along with 5 others, interviewed on January 3rd, 2020. Shelby has worked for the Division of Emergency Services since her migration from the city of Hagerstown following the consolidation of the dispatch centers in 2009. She interviewed well, answered the questions in depth, and also provided a portfolio of various accomplishments throughout her career. She also has her EMD, EPD, EFD, ETC, and CTO certifications.
What grade was this?
This is for a grade 13, step 11 position.
Commissioners, thoughts, comments?
Recommend to approve Shelby Hall for the position.
First and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye, approved. Thank you very much. Any other county staff, please come forward. Okay. Whoever wants to go first.
Commissioners, the delegation has asked for a letter of support for House Bill 810. It would provide workers' compensation coverage for members of volunteer fire and rescue companies who are at least 15 years of age and are enrolled in the Washington County Fire and Rescue Academy program, which is operated by the Washington County Board of Education. It is staff's recommendation that a letter of support be sent in support of this bill.
Is it just a consensus to write the letter, or is it you want a motion?
If you have a motion, we can put in that it was supported by all of you or whatever.
Can we get a copy of that?
I'll be glad to send you a copy of it, but it just extends workers' comp coverage to students who are engaged in the fire academy in the event that they were to get hurt as a result of that.
I'd entertain a motion if anybody's ready, or do you want to, one more?
Motion to support a letter of support.
Second.
First and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of supporting the letter, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Kurt. Anything else?
Also a request that the commissioners send a letter of support in support delegation bill HB 789, which allows licensed wineries in Washington County to sell self-produced alcoholic beverages at special events subject to certain requirements. This is a delegation bill, and it's meant to help the local agritourism industry.
And that was supported by the entire delegation, all the members?
I believe so.
Commissioner,
Motion to approve the letter of support.
is there a second?
Second.
First and second, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Final matter is a request from Delegate Parrott for a letter of support for House Bill 1516. He is here and would like to address the commissioners.
All right, Neil, during citizens' participation, please introduce your team and the matter. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Commissioner Klein and Commissioners. It's my honor to be here today to talk to you just a little bit about House Bill 1516. And to my right, I've got Nick Allman. He works with me in Annapolis. This is the needle giveaway program. And the bill would simply say that Washington County would be exempt from the statewide program. Currently, around the state, only 3 jurisdictions actually have this program operating. The city of Baltimore, and they've had it for about 25 years. Washington County, of course, and Frederick County. In the city of Baltimore, they've had it since 1994, about, like 25 years. And unfortunately, one of the big reasons for the program is to limit blood-transmitted diseases. And we just read in January that Baltimore has the highest rate of blood-transmitted diseases of any city in the entire country. So whatever they're doing there in Baltimore is not working, unfortunately. And I think with this program, too, it sends the wrong message that government is endorsing doing drugs, when really that would simply be the wrong message to be sending by giving people drug paraphernalia when they go to the health department. And one last thing, with this program, it used to be, when it started, a needle exchange program. So you'd go in, you'd get needles, and then you had to turn them back in to get more needles. They found that wasn't working, and so the legislature changed it. So now it's simply a needle giveaway program. No one has to turn in needles to get more needles. And unfortunately, what we see now is a proliferation of needles all across the city of Baltimore. It's ending up in their storm drains, but we're also seeing a proliferation of needles here in Hagerstown, where just this summer, a 2-year-old who was playing in Hagerstown City Park pricked themselves with a needle that was probably a drug needle, just simply discarded. And thankfully, there wasn't fentanyl in that needle, because if there was, she would have died on the spot. And also, there was an officer just a month ago who was stuck when he was trying to clear out the drug excess bin, where needles were not supposed to be, but this person had dumped a ton of needles. So to investigate this a little bit, I asked my aide to go yesterday into the health department to find out what happens, what is actually given to people when they ask for this kit. So first, it's anonymous, so they didn't take his exact name, but they had different things he could identify himself if he came in later, and they gave him a card. He did get needles. They actually don't just have one set of needles. They asked him, would you like the thick kind or the thin kind, long or small? And so he went in and got 20 needles in 2 packs like this without any question at all. They also gave him 2 Narcan packs. They gave him alcohol pads so you can keep yourself clean, and get some more things to keep yourself clean as you're doing this. They gave an instruction kit on how you can safely give yourself an injection. They gave them things to clean the needles when they're done. Here's another Narcan. They gave him the actual tourniquet that you can use to clot off the blood so you can do it better to give yourself the drug. They also gave him a kit that they could take back to return the needles. Of course, I don't believe many people are doing this. That's why we're seeing them all over the place. And there was no requirement they would return the needles. One other thing they gave him was a packet of information. And in this packet, I would have hoped, at the very least, that they would have talked about Narcotics Anonymous. They would have sent them to some good places where they could have actually gotten some help. There was no help in this packet for someone to get off of drugs. And actually, one of the pamphlets here talks about how abstinence from drugs, I'll just go ahead and read it. We believe recovery is not the same as abstinence, and abstinence is not always necessary for recovery. Well, I don't see how you get off of drugs without stopping doing drugs. I think this, again, is sending the wrong message to people who really need help in our community. And the last thing I want to point out, this is drug paraphernalia that they're handing out. Here are the actual pans that you can use to melt the drug that you would put inside of the needles. So basically, this is a drug starter kit for someone who wants to get involved in injecting drugs. I think it's very unfortunate. Again, I think it sends the wrong message. That's why I'd really encourage today that you all would support House Bill 1516 so that we would exempt Washington County from the needle giveaway program.
You go ahead, Wayne. You want to go? You know, I think, you know, personally, I'm sort of drawn between two, you know, blood transfer disease. If your information is correct, it doesn't work in at least Baltimore, if that's correct information. I guess my school of thought, it sort of enables. I'm disappointed in that package. I'm disappointed that they would not offer more than, here's your needles.
What's the value of that package? Is there a price tag, the Narcan? Or?
That's a good question. This is all taxpayer money that's funded. I don't know. I have no idea what the value of the package
I'm
is.
sure they have programs, but when I'm handing in your aid that package, I'm very disappointed there's not, and you say I didn't see the package, you say there's nothing in there to help me get counseling.
No, they gave you this, which is just a number to the health department, so you can a drink
Right.
coaster. I mean, harm reduction works, but it's not helpful. Again, I just read you a quote from there. This is just promoting their program. It doesn't help anyone get off of drugs. I'm disappointed by that as well.
Yeah, that doesn't, and I wanted to gather more information from the health department. Looks like you already did that. And I wanted to see how your delegations felt about it. But it's a local concern. And I have a little bit of a concern that needles end up to the next person because they don't want to go to the health department and get them. There's another location, right?
So the location where Mr. Allman went was the health department that's located closer to the school, not the one that's on Pennsylvania Avenue, further north.
And I'm not throwing stones at the health department. I think basically they do a pretty good job, but that does disappoint me that we wouldn't be concentrating more on. I mean, in my opinion, the whole root of Hagerstown's problem is the drug problem. Okay, so we can stop maybe some blood transfer diseases, HIV, hepatitis, whatever. Mm-hmm. It disappoints me a little bit that we're not, you know, and I don't have the answer, so I shouldn't make a statement, but, you know, it's a tough, all walks of life are affected. And, but I'm just, you know, I tend to agree with what you're doing, so.
I would make a motion to support House Bill 1516. I think it's pretty disturbing, everything you were pulling out of that bag, and it didn't stop. You kept pulling things out. You know, the value of that's a taxpayer cost, certainly, but what if that was supplies for insulin to help diabetic patients? I called the health department this morning to see if they offer any needles or any supplies for diabetic patients, and they said, no, we don't. I think it's disappointing that we would supply those supplies to help aid drug abuse, but not to help diabetic patients. So I make a motion to support your bill.
We have a motion, we could go second for the letter and have more discussion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any other discussion?
I just had one question. You had mentioned that the city of Baltimore is the highest in the state. Is that a number or by percentage? Probably both,
Yeah,
but-
so the city of Baltimore has the highest rate of blood transmitted diseases in the entire country, and that's by percentages.
I see both sides, but that kit seems like we're enabling it. If we were enabling it, what are we going to do to help stop those applying for those?
And in addition, maybe you could talk to Commissioner Kiefer about insulin being provided to for our community. And maybe that'd be a good bill to put in.
One other comment I have, I am going to ask Mr. Stoner maybe to come in at a later date and give a full presentation to the public and the board about that program. I have a first and a second. Is there any other conversation? All in favor of writing a letter, I guess based on, will you help us provide the language? Will staff interpret it and we all get to review it before it goes out? When do you want this letter by?
Really just as soon as possible.
Okay, before your meeting Wednesday, tomorrow? That'd
If
be
possible.
appropriate. I think we can do that. We can get a letter out to review it, so we're all in.
Could I ask one more question?
Sir.
How many of those kits are issued in Washington County?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know the answer, but I do know that this only took 15 minutes, this whole process. Mr. Allman was in and out in 15 minutes, and in the time that he was in, someone else did come in that walked right back into the storage room, and he's used to just coming and going. They had to ask him to go out because Mr. Allman was there. I don't know. I imagine that it's a
I
lot.
just assumed it was just a needle program.
Well, and it's not just one needle.
Yeah.
There are 20 different types of needles that people can get when they go there.
Discussion being over, call for a vote to support a letter.
Aye.
Favor say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Thank you, and just, thank you. I know this was citizen participation, but the importance of this matter, we wanted to be able to have you and make your presentation and extend your time a little longer, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome. And now, Krista, we're going to go back to county staff. I was trying to be conscious of the delegates' time to return to Annapolis. Krista, would you proceed?
Sure. I have the board appointments. We need the Washington County Building Code Board of Appeals, which is a newly reconstituted board. They would like to form the board. We need, we're looking at John Barr to serve a first full 3-year term, March 1st, 2020 through February 28th, 2023. Aaron Peter,
Better next.
yes, to serve a first full 3-year term from March 1st, 2020 through February 28th, 2023. Ernie Giannicola to serve a partial 2-year term from March 1st, 2020 through February 28th, 2022. Nick Hill to serve a partial term from March 1st, 2020 through February 28th, 2022. And Terry Wishard to serve a partial term from March 1st, 2020 through February 28th, 2021.
This board again is
Washington County Building Code Board of Appeals.
commissioners. Approve. Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Krista. Any other staff reports looming? Since, if not, we'll proceed to the next item, public hearing, application for zoning. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I jumped ahead. Thank you for the reminder. My forgiveness. Let's begin with citizens' participation. Those in the front row. Sir, please introduce yourself and the matter you wish to discuss.
Martin Brubaker, Hagerstown, Maryland. I wish to discuss the solar energy party of interest matter that's before you later this morning. As you all probably remember, I obtained a lot of experience with the Public Service Commission the latter part of last year. And I have recommendations. I think that you ought to consider being automatically making yourselves party of interest to any case before the PSC. The PSC process is full of, to be polite again, blind alleys and catch-22s, as I learned. You might remember I thought I put together a pretty good factual summary considering this case, and I was not allowed to present it in Baltimore. Going beyond what is in your packet, the real hearing is not out here. It's in Baltimore. It's called the evidentiary hearing, and you cannot testify at that unless you are a party of interest. And that's the real hearing. It's held in Baltimore. I went to it in July for the Kiefer Funk matter, and there was no one else, as far as I know, except my wife and I from Washington County at that hearing. I was not allowed to testify, either oral or written. Many of the statements made by the so-called expert witnesses were misleading, to be polite, but I could not refute them, and I could not appeal the judge's later decision 2.5 months later, as you may remember. And they told me that the county the staff would not include county appeal or recommend it because you were not a party of interest, and I believe Mr. Downey followed that line of thought as well, although even though I came in November and recommended a manner in which you could, I thought, get the case in front of the Public Service Commission itself. That never happened. I don't know what happened because nobody has ever contacted me since then, so I don't know what happened in that situation. And I will just leave it that the report, the interim report by the Governor's Task Force on Renewable Energy, chaired by a former president of this body, is considering recommending making county boards automatically parties of interest. So I'm just following it's not a recommendation yet, this is an interim report, but it's mentioned in here. Also, there are up to 35,000 agricultural acres at risk due to solar in Maryland. And the governor wants a balanced approach. He favors solar and renewable energy, has several initiatives in this regard, but he doesn't think it ought to be at the cost of sites that are detrimental to the county's interest. So I know there are some potential political downsides, but if you don't make yourselves a party of interest, and believe me, when I talk to staff down there, once again, I'll thank you for the letter you wrote against the Kiefer Funk, recommending against the Kiefer Funk project, but it was almost totally discounted by the administrative judge, who, by the way, is not a judge. It's really a bureaucratic appointee. And the staff, whom I talked to extensively on the phone on this project, said, well, you know, they weren't interested. Didn't even bother being an interested party. Why should we listen to that? So I strongly recommend you do it, not just for this case, but for any case that qualifies for PSC review. And could you please tell me what I'm doing here in November or got the same reception? What is this a subject that you don't want to hear about? I've only been here 3 times. Okay, sorry, but.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rubaker.
Yeah, sorry, Jeff.
Anyone else in citizens' participation? Please come forward. Try to keep your comments to 3 minutes, but we won't pull you off the stage. Thank you. You're welcome, sir. Please introduce yourself and the matter.
Good morning, President Klein and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Boyd Michaels, Superintendent of Washington County Public Schools, 10435 Downsville Pike, Hagerstown, Maryland. I'm here this morning to ask you, as our partners in the county government, to work with Washington County Public Schools to fulfill 2 goals. First of all, to provide a safe and healthy learning environment for our children, and second of all, to keep taxpayer dollars here in Washington County. I was alarmed to discover that the first draft of the Capital Improvement Program, CIP, is approximately $2.7 million short of the school system's request for FY21. Our board members have shared the CIP with you at various meetings as far back as August of 2018 and as recently as February 4th of this year. At these proposed funding levels of your first draft, WCPS will only be able to pay off the remaining of Sharpsburg Elementary and will not be able to make a dent in our growing infrastructure challenges. The HVAC system at Smithburg High School was original to the building, constructed in 1965. 1965. The chiller at North Hagerstown High School has already been rebuilt once and is well past its service life. South Hagerstown High School and Western Heights Middle School are in need of new roofs. These are all critical systems, and these are structures that cannot fail, or we fail our students. These types of projects would be considered high priorities for any of us as homeowners. Our community expects children to be in school to be warm in the winter, to be cool when they're supposed to be cool, and to be dry at all times. I think those are reasonable expectations. Our community members work hard to earn their living, and they pay their fair share of taxes. You can respect their tireless efforts as citizens by keeping their tax dollars here locally. The state is offering a match on eligible construction costs that cannot be refused. For 21 cents of every dollar invested by you, the state will match that with 79 cents. If the Board of County Commissioners steps up to fully fund the school system's capital improvement request, our community will leverage those dollars, and the state will bear the majority of the costs of these systemic projects. If the commissioners cannot change the CIP allocation in the first draft, local taxpayers will lose over $4.4 million. $4.4 million already allocated to Washington County. Money that's going to go back to Annapolis, and money that'll be reallocated to construct other schools or other systemic projects in other counties. Furthermore, you jeopardize the potential to receive funding from the state for similar purposes in future years. It appears the state is going to use a rolling 5-year average of what counties take on. So the 2 years that we failed to fully take advantage of our CIP several years ago is costing us already. If we do this again, it'll continue to cost our rolling 5-year average. I believe each of you would agree that the children in our community deserve a safe and healthy learning environment. Our community depends on you, our county commissioners, and the state to support our school infrastructure. So keep Washington County taxpayer dollars in Washington County. I ask you to fully fund the school system's capital requests for FY21 and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mike.
Dr. Michael, at the presentation last week by your staff and board, I forgot to thank them for coming in, giving a wonderful presentation, and I'd just like to, hopefully you'll tell them that I said thanks for the presentation, and we are reviewing it.
Okay,
So,
we'll pass that on.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens who'd like to come forward? State your name and your matter. Yeah, he's coming up. Sir, welcome. State your name and
Good morning,
address
County
and
Commissioner. My name's James Devine, Post Office Box 2217, Hagerstown, Maryland. I come to talk on the solar project. I know there's not supposed to be a hearing till March 26th of next month on it. As I come in and spoke to you before, there has to be rules and regulations set up with the county. The National Electric Codes provide 690.-2 provide hookups, but it's an interconnection of the electric to the main power grid that I want to question about. How much is the wholesale price of electric in this area? If they say there's a wholesale price of it, because here's my concern. Here, 2 years from now, there's going to be over 100 different vehicles out there. Manufacturers going to be put out that's electric. Now, people are going to want to put solar capacity in their homes, on their property, because if you have an electric vehicle, you can set up the photoelectric sensors with a battery backup. You can, if you have two vehicles, you can bring one home, charge it, drive the other one. You know, the electric vehicles are going to be the thing of the future. You know, and I hate to say it, I don't mean to insult anybody, but people that they say these projects hurt their eyes, they should get their eyes or their head examined, because this is the future of electric. You know, and what you see out on these homes sometimes as small satellite discs could also be solar collectors. But the county has to set up some type of rules and regulations in the county for the regular homeowners to be able to set up solar projects on their property, even though they're not feeding back into the power line. You know, and like I say, where are the rules and regulations for the county for the interconnection to the power grid? You know, it's the time that people have to take in order to get these things processed. You know, from just from this application, and I don't know. It says that the county, it didn't give a location for the hearing. Where would the next hearing be located? It said it's supposed to be in coordination. They were asking the county to coordinate with them for a hearing and to coordinate with them in the hearing. So where is the hearing going to be held at? Nobody? In Hagerstown? Washington County? I know one says it's supposed to be Baltimore, but where's the March 26th hearing held at?
At a community location, the PSC will set that up. The PSC is in charge of that project.
The paper even says it's supposed to work with in conjunction with the county commissioners, so.
It is a state project.
Oh, it's not going to be outside, is it? Anyways, it's the interconnection system, you know, that I'm concerned about, and it's the ratepayer. But what I'm more concerned about is I see investors coming in with large amount of monies, telling like maybe large property owners or farmers, we'll put this on your property, but the photovoltaic panels last for 20-25 years, so this thing's going to be producing income for 20-25 years. What's electric rate going to be in 20-25 years? You know, people with all electric homes are now spending up to $2,000 a year on their electric bill for their house. And that's why I say solar is going to be one of the things of the big future. You know, people wanting it in their property to either for their home or for their vehicle. And I guess I come back and speak on the solar project, the Pacific Solar Project. But I think the county has to do more and even work with the legislators to make it more adaptable for people to gain solar power for their home or even their vehicle. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping it brief. Appreciate it. Any other citizens would like to come forward? Seeing none, we have 11 o'clock public hearing, or is it, oh, okay, didn't see you. Come on down. State your name and address, please. For the record.
My name is Judy Fahey. I reside at 13910 Greencastle Pike in Hagerstown. I just want to add one or two comments to what Mr. Brubaker.
Brubaker, Martin.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names. I agree wholeheartedly with everything he said, but I would also like to point out that when you look at the Public Service Commission's decision on the Funk solar array, under the column where it begins with what they use to reach their decision, the very first thing they say is lack of participation from the county government except for a letter. So it is that important to them that we have our county government involved. And I also want to thank you for making this an open meeting on this subject. and for discussing it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens who would like to come forward? All right, seeing none, we'll proceed to the 11 o'clock public hearing, application for zoning map amendment. Joe Baker. I will start off with reading the rules. Next on the agenda is a public hearing concerning zoning map amendment RZ-19-006 Heritage Hewitt LLC. The purpose of this hearing is to hear public testimony concerning the matter. The procedure is as follows. We will first have staff introduce the matter. The applicant will then have the opportunity to testify, after which the hearing will be open for public comment and testimony. Public testimony and comment is limited to approximately 3 minutes per speaker. After everyone who wishes to speak has done so, the applicant will have the opportunity for a brief rebuttal because the applicant has the burden. The hearing and the record will then close, and no other comments, correspondence, or emails will be considered. The commissioners may discuss the issue and take any action that they deem appropriate, including adoption or rejection of the proposal, or they may take the issue under advisement and deliberate at a later date. Would anyone who will testify today and please take the oath, stand and take the oath for our county clerk.
Solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the responses given and statements made will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
I need names.
Okay, when they, Jill, would you introduce the matter?
Morning, Commissioners. Before you today is a request for a zoning map amendment, RZ 19-006, for Heritage Hewitt LLC. The land is located on the west side of the Greencastle Williamsport Pike, also known as Maryland 63, approximately 1/10 of a mile north of its intersection with the National Pike, also known as US 40. The applicant is seeking to rezone 29.57 acres of land that is currently zoned business local to a new designation of planned industrial. When rezonings are not part of a comprehensive rezoning by the governing body, these individual amendments, also known as piecemeal rezonings, are under the obligation, pardon me, to meet the test of the change or mistake rule. Part of that evaluation to determine whether the applicant has proven whether there has been either a change or a mistake in the zoning. The Maryland Annotated Code and the Washington County Zoning Ordinance state that the local legislative body is required to make findings of fact on at least 6 different criteria in order to ensure that it is consistent in its evaluation of each case. Those criteria have been evaluated, and they are in the staff report that's dated November 2019 and was included within your packet. The applicant asserts that there was a mistake in the applied zoning based on assumptions made by the commissioners at the time of the last rezoning. The applicant asserts that the commissioners made their previous decision based on an assumption that the existing sewer line that ended at the intersection of Maryland 63 and US 40 could not be extended any further north based on financial feasibility. This, in their mind, has since been invalidated by the fact that the developer of this property has recently extended the line north of the intersection to actually get to this property. The application was presented to the Planning Commission at a public information meeting held at their regular December 3rd, 2019 meeting. No evidence was actually formally presented at that meeting, so we had another meeting on January 7th, 2020, where the information already spoken about was presented. The members recommended unanimous approval of the proposed zoning amendment. You'll find attached in your application, in your packets, the rezoning application, the staff report, Planning Commission minutes, and the Planning Commission recommendation. I have nothing further at this point. I'll turn it over to the applicant.
And now the applicant. gentlemen, good morning. Would you please introduce yourself and your address?
Good morning, Mr. President, Commissioners. Noel Manalo, Law Offices of Miles and Stockbridge, 30 West Patrick Street, Frederick, Maryland, here on behalf of the applicant, Heritage Hewitt. Also present, we have Mr. Terry with Heritage Hewitt and Kenny Heimbaugh with Seacray, the engineer of record. And we're here to present. Thank you for the opportunity. Good morning to the commissioners and to county staff. Again, we're very excited to be here this morning on behalf of this project. Just again, for background, we are looking at 30 acres, again, as Ms. Baker reiterated, summarized, requesting 30 acres to be rezoned from business local to planned industrial. We feel as though this, and we discussed this at Planning Commission, we feel this is a great opportunity for this part of town. The 30 acres being rezoned to planned industrial will essentially conform it to the balance of the Heritage Hewitt holdings there so that the zoning is consistent for the entire assemblage. We're hopeful that we can then proceed with the planned Creekside Logistics Center, hoping for a lot of economic development and business in that end. Obviously, for that to occur, for us to be able to put the plans forward, we need the business local rezoned to planned industrial of this piece. I just wanted to take a couple minutes, as I did in Planning Commission, to underline that our justification for this request is based on the legal concept of mistake. And it just, again, I always like to reiterate that when you hear the word mistake, there's sort of the common connotation you have in general, in sort of a general understanding. But for purposes of Maryland zoning, the term mistake is somewhat more precise. In other words, it's not a mistake of, oh, shoot, we did this and it was a bad idea. What we're talking about in Maryland rezoning law for a change or mistake case is that the assumptions or premises that the decision were based on were invalid at the time. And again, when this was initially rezoned, the assumptions and premises were that sewer could not be extended in a way that would facilitate this 30 acres to be zoned planned industrial. Obviously, that assumption we are asserting and had presented evidence and testimony to this effect that was invalid and therefore justifies your board, you all for deciding that we could rezone this under the auspices of mistake. So again, I hope that in looking at the totality of what is transpiring at this part of town and the project that's planned and the opportunity that is presented, that you will follow the Planning Commission's unanimous recommendation and look favorably upon our request. Mr. Terry, Mr. Randall's here obviously to answer any questions as well relative to the business and the timing, but we're here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions, or do the others want to testify?
I would just make one, maybe help clarify the sewer situation. Originally, this property was residential many years ago, and there was a large development plan there, and it was anticipated for that development that a major sewer line would be extended from the Hopewell area and go east of the 4063 intersection and cross 63 to this property, which was a major undertaking, and the residential developer was working on having that done and getting the easements and so forth when they went bankrupt. And after we acquired the property sometime after that, and we went to the Planning Commission, ultimately to the commissioners, to ask that the property be rezoned so that we could start to develop the property. So it was agreed to a portion of a split zoning, planned industrial, and about 30 acres of business local. The business local would not require public sewer, so some development could start almost immediately after some road construction on that part of the property. Still going under the assumption that the major sewer line from the Hopewell area, costing millions of dollars, would have to be extended to the north. We proceeded, and that zoning was approved based on that those assumptions at the time. We found out about 2 years ago that sewer could be extended to the property by simply extending a line 3,000 feet north on Route 63 across the 4063 intersection and into our property. And it was not a major expense. We actually did that, and it's now servicing the the sheet store that's there. The right-of-ways are in place to extend it into the Hewitt's property. And it's also, the Mennonite school's been given access to that line also. And it's more than adequate to serve the needs for our development. So I'm not sure what changed, but it changed, and now we can develop the property without being a business local designation and can do a larger planned industrial development there, and that's what our request is.
Sir, would you have any other?
I have nothing to add at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll take public comment. Is there anyone there in the audience for public comment who's taking the oath or would take the oath?
Anything else you need from us?
Not at the moment. No public comment. You have an opportunity for a rebuttal, but there's no public comment on. Do you want a rebuttal on or add anything extra since?
The only thing I'll add is
Sir.
we have been moving forward with our project, and it's the site plan is nearly ready, the grading plan is nearly ready. We've been working for over a year and a half, almost 2 years, on getting the project ready to be a logistics center, which would be a warehousing, distribution, and all traffic studies. Things are pretty much ready to go. That if all approvals line up as we're anticipating, construction could be in late summer or fall to start on a 730,000 square foot building.
Thank you. Just wanted to conclude. Thank you again, Mr. President. Obviously, reiterating the testimony provided this morning, the submissions to the record, both written and oral at the Planning Commission record, and their positive recommendation. Again, we're very excited about this opportunity, and we would greatly appreciate your favorable disposition of our request. Thank you.
Thank you. The applicant has now had their opportunity for rebuttal. Do the commissioners have any questions before we close out the record? And then we still have an opportunity for comments.
Yeah, I just had it might be a question, however you want to address it. Bob, remember when that development that Mr. Randall referred to prior to him taking ownership, and they had talked about, I think in that agreement, there was a line could possibly be run from our landfill down through the development's property for the leachate collection out of the landfill. Is any of that still a possibility or anything?
I'm going to defer that to Mark Bradshaw.
Yes, we've actually talked to Mr. Randall, and he's agreed to give us an easement from the rear of his property up to the front, so that in the future, if we wish to do that leachate project, it would be feasible.
I can't remember the amount of money that could have potentially been saved by running that line through that property. You recall the dollars that were being referred to as savings at that time?
No, I can't remember what the savings would be. That was done years ago.
Commissioners, any more comments before I close the meeting?
I was on that. I'm on the Planning Commission, so I've heard this a couple times. I didn't vote, just for record, because I knew I'd be hearing in a public hearing. It was unanimous. I can remember that we had, I think, one gentleman show up, and that's all, and that was only more of a curious thing. He wasn't at all against it. So there's been no public disapproval. It's a location. I had that property for sale years and years ago, and the main problem is you couldn't sell it because of sewer. And I'm glad you clarified the word mistake. What's presumed as true then is not, never say never. So you guys found a way to do it, and I'd be in favor of it for sure.
Commissioners, have any other comments before I close the meeting? The public hearing is now concluded, and the record is closed. Commissioners, any further comments or thoughts? You can respond today, or we can wait and bring it back for another decision.
There wasn't any
Opposition?
No.
No, I'd entertain a motion to approve it.
I had a motion to approve.
Have a second?
Actually, if you
Well,
recall,
we
this is a rezoning, so we're just gonna come to a consensus, and then my office will prepare
Bring back
the
the resolution.
decision, and
There we go. We have a
Those findings.
consensus to move forward with that recommendation. All right, 4-0. Thank you all very much.
okay, so consensus to approve the rezoning.
This is the approved rezoning 4-0. Thank you for the correction. Excuse me. Next up, Interagency Environmental Health Work Group. Mr. Stoner, please introduce yourself in the matter, sir, and the folks with you.
Earl Stoner from the Health Department.
Sarah Lou Truscott, Environmental Health Department.
Jill Baker, Director of Planning and Zoning for the county.
Thank you for the opportunity to come and present today. I will just do sort of a real brief intro, and then I'll turn it over to the co-chairs of the committee, the gurus, so to speak. But on the 26th of November of last year, the Health Department convened a meeting of key stakeholders, city, county, Maryland Department of Environment, to really kind of do a level set as it relates to the environmental health landscape, economic development, public health issues, those sorts of things, and really look at some of the constraints, some of the challenges, but probably most importantly, some of the, what are the opportunities that we have to all kind of get on the same page and move forward together. As a result of that, meeting, a work group was formed to really take the information from that meeting and sort of put it into action, look at those challenges, look at those opportunities, and say, where do we want to go with this? How can we get to the end goal? And the co-chairs, Jill and Lou, will take it from here.
Thank you for giving us some time this morning. We know that Washington County's karst geology is problematic. We know that it contains VOCs in some areas, hepatitis, fecal coliforms, pesticides, for example. But do we really know where those problem areas are? Have they changed over the years? Do we understand the movement of those contaminants under our feet that make it into our water supply that moms and dads and children drink? The stakes are moving forward are high: economic development and the health of our citizens. So how can we move forward? I think we can do that by working together. As Earl pointed out, we have an interagency environmental health work group that allows the city of Hagerstown, Washington County, and the state to move forward to come to consensus of what our problems may be, what our opportunities are, and how we can move forward with the other state regulatory agencies to make progress for economic development while protecting the health of our citizens. So we're here today to ask for a letter of support from the Board of County Commissioners. So we may take that with us when we talk to state regulatory agencies. We have also talked with the city of Hagerstown, and they have agreed to a letter of support as well. So today, that's our intent, is to seek a letter of support from the board. Thank you.
Commissioners, questions? Comments? Would this be a motion or a motion? Is there a motion to write a letter of support with the supporting the study? And the mission of the study is to?
This would be a starting point for us to basically know where we are in terms of our water quality and where our issues are. So this is sort of the beginning of understanding where we are and getting our feet under
The letter could
us.
be in general with a specific reference to this study. Is that, I'm just worried, concerned about the language that would be in the letter.
It would just be a letter of support for us to look for funding and talk to the regulatory agencies.
Did we talk about that in health advisory, didn't we?
The last study that was done was 40 years ago. It was
40
the,
years ago.
Wright study.
Yeah. I would motion to support that.
Is there a second?
I'll second for a little bit of discussion here. At our State of the County last week, the evening session at HCC, there was a gentleman who spoke of the karst geology, and he's a local expert on that subject. And I know we've spoken about that before, septic tanks in the county. I believe Jill has a date planned to meet with him. He asked about having that as part of our comprehensive plan, and I'm not sure of your involvement with the comprehensive plan or even that discussion, but it might be helpful if you were on board with maybe that initial meeting, see if you could provide some help and support for us also.
Sure. Do that.
Just a thought.
Okay, this is first and second. Any other discussion to support a letter? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are all our Youth Meritus Award winners here? Are all of them here? Is there any, well, hold on one second there. Commissioners, would you mind if we did Youth Meritus to get them out of the way so we can get more time for the perennial solar discussion? Would that be okay with everyone?
It's fine.
Okay, we'll bring forward the Youth Meritus winner. Please come forward and introduce the matter. Thank you for the commissioners for cooperation.
Good morning, everyone. Throughout the school year, the Board of County Commissioners present the Youth Meritorious Awards to students attending both public and private school or those being homeschooled in Washington County. The following individuals have been selected based on their scholastic achievement, leadership qualities, community service performed, or other positive contributions to their school and community. These exceptional youth have consistently worked in distinguishing themselves as model students and members of our county. It's my pleasure to present the following youth for recognition today. We have Griffin Omni, Cal Denton, and Emily Stamper.
We go first, Terry, announce your candidate.
To our local youth that do great things in our county, and many of the certificates and individuals that we provide certificates and accolades to become future leaders within our county and state, federal governments, and so forth. So based on the information that I've read here, so far on you, who knows where you're headed. So anyhow, we do have a letter here, and it's was endorsed, and it says, Emily is a junior at Heritage Academy. She is a member of the National Honor Society, where she is the secretary. She plays varsity basketball and has been the lead female role in the school play for the last 3 years. Outside of school, Emily is involved in 4-H, where she serves as the club president of 2 clubs. Emily attended Maryland 4-H Congress in 2017 and 2019 and will be traveling to Atlanta, Georgia this year for the National 4-H Congress. Involvement in 4-H has afforded her many opportunities to serve the community through activities such as 4-H STEAM, the 4-H STEAM Camp, Washington County Ag Literacy Trailer, St. Jude's Trail Ride. She is this year's Miss Washington County Farm Bureau. Throughout the year, she will be an advocate for Farm Bureau, teaching elementary students in Washington County about agriculture and where the food comes from. So some very kind words here, and they were provided by your mom. So make sure you give her a nice hug tonight. Also, on behalf of Washington County, again, we have a certificate of recognition, and it's presented to Emily Stamper. In recognition for your outstanding achievement in being selected as a recipient of the February 2020 Youth Meritorious Award. Your academic accomplishments, leadership, and extracurricular activities are to be commended by both adults and peers in Washington County. In all aspects, you have shown yourself to be a superior role model for all youth. We, the Board of County Commissioners of Washington County, Maryland, do hereby congratulate you on your achievements. Signed by all 5 county commissioners, 4 of them are here today, has a gold seal that's probably solid gold, worth a lot of money. And in addition to the certificate, we would also like to provide you with a $100 gift card to Staples, our county lapel pin. And again, I just want to say congratulations, keep up the great work. And I would like to ask you a question. I'd like to know what STEAM stands for.
It's science, technology, engineering, agriculture, and math.
Wow. So, very good. And do you have any guests here today that you would like to introduce?
My mom, she's the one who nominated me.
Thank you. And we all know why. So congratulations and best of luck.
And folks, after the ceremony, we'll have our time up here to take some pictures for the family. And
All right, I need Cale Denton front and center up here. He's a big shot today. Bring your family up with you. Come on.
oh, no.
How are you? All right, you're at Heritage Academy. You were nominated by Dawn Horn. Your parent is Tammy Denton. Dawn Horn endorsed the following. Cale is a very ambitious student and is self-driven to give his very best. He is an A student. He taught the class sign language, and we used his teaching to perform a song for our Grandparents' Day program. You're going to have to teach me that because I'm a grandparent, all right? Our class makes and sells popcorn for various mission projects after school. He volunteered to make and sell the popcorn in the parking lot and during after-school activities. Cale is always willing to help out other students in the classroom with difficult lessons. He has a great laugh and inspires everyone he is around. Yeah, that's pretty good, Cale. Let me hear your laugh. Yeah, it was a good laugh. Y'all couldn't hear that, but that was a pretty good laugh. Okay, I also have a certificate of recognition. It's presented to Cale Denton. In recognition of your outstanding achievements in being selected as a recipient of the February 2020 Youth Meritorious Award, your academic accomplishments, leadership, and extracurricular activities are to be commended by both adults and peers in Washington County. In all aspects, you have shown yourself to be a superior role model for all youth. We, the Board of County Commissioners of Washington County, Maryland, do hereby congratulate you on your achievements. We're going to award this the 11th day of February 2020 by the Washington County Board of Commissioners. Good job. Good. I also have a $100, I think it's on there, yeah, I didn't take it, $100 Staples gift certificate. And this fine-looking Washington County pin. Thank you. Oh, okay.
Next up, Griffin Almany. If parents would like to come along, but we'll take time after this presentation for family pictures and a group photo. If my records are correct, Mr. Almany, you had someone on February 7th, 2013 appear here for an award, and was that Tucker?
Yes.
And how's he doing today?
He's doing great, thank you.
Very good. So you have a lot of footsteps to follow.
Yes, sir.
So welcome. Today, Griffin Almany, we're going to present you a Youth Meritorious Award. Parents Tim and Donna. Mary Scrow, is that correct? That's you? Okay, thank you. We'll ask for introductions here. Thank you for I said that right? Yes, you did. Endorse the following. Griffin is a high moral and ethical young man that represents himself, his school, and his family very well. He is a loyal friend, helpful to those that need him, and he is a good citizen of Washington County. Griffin is a three-sport varsity athlete in soccer, wrestling, and lacrosse. In soccer, he received the Most Improved Player this year and was one of the team captains. In wrestling last year, Griffin was the MAC and IPSL conference champion for wrestling at 126 pounds, where he had the highest team winning percentage with a 36-10 record and was second team All-County in 2019. In lacrosse this past spring, Griffin was second team All-County playing attack. He finished the season 8th in the county for total points scored and second on the Saints team for scoring. When Griffin is not competing, he stays active on campus. He volunteers as a tour guide for families and prospective students at the school. In addition, he helped found the SJS Audio Video Club, a member of the chess club, and provides lacrosse coaching lessons for kids. Griffin will be attending a 4-year university upon graduation and hopes to major in sports management with a minor in political science or Spanish, and possibly pursue a law degree in the future. Congratulations on those fine comments. I forgot to mention St. James is his school, so pardon that omission. So on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners, we'd like to present the certificate of recognition to Griffin Almany. In recognition of your outstanding achievement in being selected as a recipient of the February 2020 Youth Meritorious Award, your academic accomplishments, leadership, and extracurricular activities are to be commended by adults, both adults and peers in Washington County. In all respects, you have shown yourself to be a superior role model for youth. We, the Board of County Commissioners of Washington County, Maryland, hereby congratulate you with all your achievements. Congratulations. And if we get a photo here. Again, we'd like to present you with a Staples. Yours has a bunch of zeros. I think it says 100. And again, wear this lapel pin proudly. Congratulations to everyone. A picture, then family will let you get some photos, commissioners.
Just for you. Thanks.
There, we'll get pictures for you afterwards.
Okay. Everybody ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. What can we do one with just the students, and then we'll do one with family, if that's okay? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. And then, would you like your families to come up? I'll be happy to take over for everyone. They're going to do family photos. Yeah, just one at a time is fine. So, yep, so whoever wants to go. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. All right. There we go. You don't want a picture up there? Yeah, I can take a photo. Oh, yeah.
Grandparents? Teacher, well, you should have come up there. You guys should have come up there.
Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. All right. You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, ready? 1. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. Next on the agenda will be our Public Service Commission perennial solar license. Before that, I'd like to thank those here for this upcoming discussion, for your patience and allowing the kids to go first and have a big audience for the presentation. So thank you for your patience on that. Jill, would you introduce yourself in the matter, please?
Good afternoon. Being presented here, Jill Baker, Director of the Planning and Zoning. Also, let Andy introduce himself.
Andrew Bright, Assistant County Attorney.
Put together here for you this afternoon is a path forward, more or less, in trying to navigate how we will proceed with Public Service Commission hearings regarding solar energy and other renewables as they become more prevalent within the county. You can see in the ARF and the agenda report form that the Public Utility Law Judge has set forth a procedural schedule that's included within your packets of how these types of hearings would move forward. I'll defer to Andrew at this point in terms of what the legal ramifications and discussion are about this.
Certainly. As you're aware, the matter has been rescheduled for today from the closed session. The positive side of that is that there can be public participation and understanding. The downside of that is that whatever attorney-client privilege might have applied to the advice that our office can give would not apply to anything that's said, obviously, in public. The scheduling order sets a deadline for petitions to intervene for parties, interested persons who wish to become parties or litigants to the procedure in front of the Public Service Commission. Litigants obviously have procedural rights that other persons do not have, the right to present evidence, cross-examine evidence, make requests for conditions to any certificate that's granted, file motions to reconsider. All the rights that litigants have in a typical court proceeding would only apply to the county if it filed a petition to intervene as a party. Before the commissioners do that, it seems to us that you should consider carefully how then does the county intend to behave as a litigant. And Mr. Brubaker's observation was correct that the Public Service Commission exists essentially to act upon project requests that are very unpopular. And so it relies upon its own expertise, the expertise of its staff that has credentials with letters after their name, etc. It relies on expert testimony to justify the decisions that it takes on applications that, by their nature, are very controversial and they are often very unpopular. The windmills on the beautiful hills are all ruled upon by the Public Service Commission. Therefore, if someone, anyone, is trying to persuade the Public Service Commission to take one action either way, the best way to persuade the PSC is through expert testimony of some form, something that is couched in terms of technical evidence, something that's empirically studied, something that's codified in the ordinance, that sort of thing. Evidence that looks scientific is persuasive to the PSC. evidence about the popularity or lack of popularity of a project has almost zero influence or persuasion upon the PSC, because by definition, every project it rules on is unpopular, at least in some circles. And so what does that mean for the county? Well, perhaps the county's involvement should be couched and limited to presenting evidence from either planning and zoning department, or if it sees a need to hire an expert to quantify and study exactly the effect on any of these factors that are listed in the statute. Effects on economics, aesthetics is in the list, but it's one out of half a dozen or more other factors. Most of the factors are economic, zoning, what is the quantifiable effect upon the county as a whole and upon neighboring parcels. So I believe that it would be our office's recommendation to intervene for purposes of having the county's foot in the door, but to consider very carefully the type of evidence that ought to be either cross-examined or submitted, and the conditions that ought to be requested that the applicant be forced to or ordered to comply with in terms of cooperating with county staff to enforce our ordinances.
Yeah, if I could just give some context. As you know, the perennial case came down, and the court ruled that the counties was preempted from exercising its zoning authority over solar energy generating systems that require Public Service Commission approval. And while we're talking about the perennial case today, this generally applies to all solar energy generating systems that are sufficient size to need Public Service Commission approval. Because we cannot exercise our zoning authority, we need a way to let the Public Service Commission know what our planning policies and requirements are as they relate to these types of projects. What that means is input regarding whether it's appropriate in the zoning district that it's proposed, whether it's compliant with the comprehensive plan or not. And further, if they grant it, what types of conditions should be placed on the project, whether there are buffer conditions, whether there are some type of screening conditions that are necessary for protecting the public from an aesthetic standpoint. And finally, it's important because our site plan requirements arise as a result of our zoning ordinance. We want the Public Service Commission to condition approval of any project on there being an acceptable site plan. So we need to be able to be at the table and provide this type of technical, professional expertise for the Public Service Commission to consider when they rule upon these applications. Just for the public listening, I want to make it clear that the County Attorney's Office is not a representative of individual citizens or individual parties that may be before the Public Service Commission, except for county government. The County Attorney's Office represents county government, and our intention would be to provide an opportunity for the input that's needed on a professional level to come from staff and to be considered by the Public Service Commission in this manner.
But, but we do represent the citizens. So if, I don't, maybe you're right obviously you are right on the county attorney's office, but if I have a numerous amount of citizens on any project come to me, so did I hear this correctly? If I want to go intervene, I can do that, but because of popularity, it's not going to have much weight, or did I hear that correctly, Andrew?
Popularity by itself is not going to have.
So if we just have people that don't want it in their backyard, that's not going to weigh anything?
Every project is going to go in someone's backyard, and the PSC is going to shade its opinion or justify its decision primarily based upon the expert testimony, the other technical evidence that's submitted. it's difficult to find a project that isn't in somebody's backyard and that doesn't look ugly at some level. And so it's all justified based on those kinds of criteria.
I think the point he's trying to make is, sure, the Public Service Commission is going to consider the reception of the community in which a project is located, but that alone is not going to be the deciding factor that the Public Service Commission ends up ruling upon.
So what would our role be? Just to support, intervene, and tell them about, or find
example,
data?
if there was some facts, I can't call from the audience, Marty, I'm sorry. What I'm going to get is a subject that Marty did bring up, that they misrepresented facts. We're the intervening party. We have the right to correct them and show what the facts really are with zoning and planning site correct. So that argument from PSC that went unchallenged, we'd be there to challenge that with facts. Would that be accurate?
As an intervening party, you could present evidence if you thought it was
That would countermand or correct what the Planning or Public Service Commission may have inappropriately stated, correct? I make the PSC have a better view of what the actual law is from us.
But I want to make clear what I've discussed with Jill and what I understand of her position as the Planning and Zoning Director. As a result of the perennial case, the Public Service Commission is the authority that determines whether the location is appropriate. Staff does not want to be in the position of having to determine whether the location is appropriate or not, because that's now the Public Service Commission's authority. Before that, it was a Board of Zoning Appeals.
If I could comment, I don't disagree that it's the Public Service Commission's authority because the judge has said so. I mean, that's how the law was interpreted, and that's what we have to abide by. But I think the judge also said, and Washington County spent a lot of time and a lot of money on pursuing this case to have a say. I think we should have a say. Not that we have a say, but we have a seat at the table. We have the ability to co-chair this hearing. Is that correct?
That's a separate proceeding.
Okay, but that's technically not what we're talking about in this case, but I think you should talk about it.
Yeah, so it's related. We have an opportunity to have a seat at the table. Not that we have a vote, but we can be there to represent our citizens. You know, I disagree about the aesthetics not necessarily being important. There's obviously more than that to these cases that are coming before us, but we're talking about the long-term planning for our county, Washington County. And I think we should have a seat at the table to exert any kind of opinion that we might have on behalf of our citizens or on behalf of the counties. And if the commissioners decide as a group to take a position on a case, whether we have a final say or not, and it sounds like we don't, I think we should direct staff to argue on our behalf.
You know, one correction I should make, I'm sorry, to my answer to Commissioner Wagner's question. Among the factors that are listed as the criteria, one factor that is listed is the recommendation of the local government body, governing body, county, or if it's in a city and municipality. And so that's, I guess, a qualification to my answer to your question. It is one factor among the several.
Yeah, it's a fact.
Any other question I have, if we sit on that board, what role do we have play? Do we have a vote? Do we have comment period? Or what's I support being there, by the way, on that. It's just, do they limit our rules or we just figure it?
Public comment hearing is primarily for members of the public in the community to express their comments, opinions, etc. on the project. And
But we, the board, aren't members of the public for the purpose of the hearing. We're a participant in administrating the hearing. Is that correct?
The statute says that the public utility law judge shall invite the local governing body to reside or attend with, basically, the utility law judge, who is the president of the meeting. So the materials from the PSC phrase it that way and then clarify that the public utility law judge will preside at the hearing and permit members of the public to, in our terms, express their 3 minutes. Now, it may not be limited to 3 minutes.
But we would have a formal process in the hearing, not merely members of the public offering testimony. We have a formal
You would
role in the hearing.
be permitted to sit with the public utility law judge.
So if we feel maybe a citizen wasn't given their due, we could speak up.
I don't believe so. The Public Service Commission procedure says the public utility law judge presides at the hearing. My understanding is that you would simply be sitting at the front table with the public utility judge, but he would actually be presiding at the
But we
hearing.
could speak up if we feel something wasn't given due consideration.
I guess that would be up to the presiding officer.
Jill, are we still working on recommendations to the Public Service Commission on this issue?
Yeah, to this point, what we would be doing is referencing what we already have adopted within our ordinance, which basically requires site plan and things like prohibition within our priority preservation areas, our rural legacy areas,
Yeah.
and our Antietam overlays. So yes, we are still reporting on those, and those would be relevant to the case, and I think they would be accepted by the PSC.
Did we send that to the Public Service Commission yet?
That would be done on a case-by-case basis. It
Okay,
wouldn't be done.
gotcha.
Well, I'd just like to ask Mr. Brubaker a question. I know you said he couldn't.
Well, go ahead. In this case, please do. Thank you.
So, when you all, as I know you have experience, and I'd like to really hear how you could help us move forward with some of the decision-making with the Public Service Commission. And did you have expert representation from your community or group?
No, again, the key hearing, the local hearings are out there, but they're not official evidence. The real hearing is held in Baltimore at the Public Service Commission at the end of the process, after you have a chance, after interested parties have registered, if they even know they're registered. In our case, nobody knew that. It was already too late, even though the process had gone on a long time. When I attended, the expert testimony, and I think I was as expert as some of the people there, you know I have a lot of experience, but I could not testify because I didn't know about registering as an interested party. Nobody had. And indeed, my wife and I were the only persons. And that's the key hearing. That's the one they reference. They swear to witnesses, and that's where the experts are. If you're a party of standing, the county can be represented there. But you weren't.
And we could have corrected some of their mistakes.
Where the rubber really hits the road
And
later on.
if we were an intervening,
After these local hearings.
if we were an intervening party and we were at that particular hearing, county intervening could have given an appropriate, more accurate description of what they misrepresented.
Right.
That's,
You have the right to present your own facts. You can't
Gotcha.
be voting on it. In fact, nobody votes on it unless there's an appeal. The Public Service Commission will not hear it. The judge's ruling will stand, and that's what happened in the Kiefer Funk case.
thank you, Marty. Commissioners, thoughts?
In the recommended motion, reach consensus to authorize the county attorney to intervene in the manner as presented.
Shouldn't it be the board, county commissioners?
Yes, we'd
Or the
intervene on
county
behalf of,
attorney acting on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners?
the Board of County Commissioners would be the party, the intervening party.
But we would be present. We would have an opportunity.
No, that is a separate discussion. Whether you want to sit at the public comment hearing is a separate discussion. Intervening is a procedural matter that technically makes us parties to the lawsuit. And largely what this is a regulatory proceeding. It's not so much like a trial. It is an accumulation of evidence, the making of a record by a lot of technical submittals. There's applications, there's expert testimony that is presented by the applicant. Yes, there is testimony. A lot of the testimony is written. So I want you to understand that the public comment thing is a small part of a much larger proceeding, at the end of which the Public Utility Law Judge makes a decision, which is in effect a recommendation to the Public Service Commission.
So we could have representation at the table, both at our local public hearing and at
Personally, I'll support the intervention part so we can have representation down there. So commissioners, we can bring back that setting on the board as another issue later if we want to set
We
it
have
down.
time for that?
If you want to set with the Public Service Commission at Smith or at Searfoss, we should let them know.
We can do that now. I'm all right with that.
I'm fine.
Okay, then somebody make a motion to include that in there and you've got it.
I would make a motion to authorize the county commissioners and the county attorney to act on behalf of the commissioners. To intervene in the manner as presented, and to also request that we take part in the upcoming public hearing pertaining to the perennial solar
It's the set
decision.
on the board with them.
Yes.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 4-0. Thank you very much. Very good. Next up, or a little behind, high-intensity drug trafficking area grant acceptance.
There he goes. Always
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Please introduce yourself in the matter.
I'm Stephanie Leopold, Senior Grant Manager with the Office of Grant Management.
Sergeant John Martin of the Narcotics Task Force.
We're here today seeking approval for the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Grant Award in the amount of $26,805. The funds support overtime enforcement actions during drug cases in the amount of $8,935 per agent for 3 deputies assigned to the Washington County Narcotics Task Force. The Office of Grant Management has reviewed the grant funding guidelines. There are no unusual conditions or requirements attached with the acceptance of the grant funds. Are there any questions?
Does that come into the city limits too, or not?
Yes, our office covers the city and the county.
Okay. Motion to approve.
Second.
Please note that Wayne has temporarily left. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Fort Ritchie Easement relocation. Todd Moser, please introduce yourselves in the matter.
Good afternoon. Todd Moser, Real Property Administrator. Joining me today is Andrew Eshelman, Director of Public Works. Fort Ritchie easement relocation, move to approve the easement relocation. The United States Army has contacted the county regarding current overhead utility easements inside the county property boundary at Fort Ritchie that are not reflective of where the overhead utilities are located. The Army is proposing a swap of easements to include releasing the current easement to the county and asking the county to convey the new easement area to the Army. The easement request should have no impact on the lands of the overhead utilities or already existing. Please refer to the attached aerial map that shows the current easement and the proposed easement.
That was just a mistake, basically what I'm seeing here. Just
Yes.
someone's,
Yes, it's essentially correcting it to the as-built conditions when it goes back to when the military owned both properties, there wasn't necessarily a need. And so it's just some housekeeping for things that really have been ongoing for years and just trying to close out.
I don't know. I'd motion to approve, but I don't know if Wayne heard it all.
Second.
First and second
Easements.
discussion. All right, first and a second, hearing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 5-0, thank you very much. 4-0, excuse me. You had to bring up the court wasn't here, didn't you? Thank you. Maryland Department of Transportation, proposed sale of surplus property, Todd Moser.
Again, for the record, Todd Moser, Real Property Administrator. Agree on a consensus to decline the acquisition of surplus property or move forward with an offer on the property. MDOT has notified the county it intends to sell property located on the west side of US 40 and between Maryland 144 and Jerome Road and Hancock, consisting of 0.88 acres. State policy allows the county to review for a 60-day period to determine any interest in acquiring the property at market value before proceeding with any sale activity. County staff has reviewed the property information, and the property would offer little benefit to the county in terms of forestation credits or other utilization.
Motion to support the recommended motion.
Second.
First and a second, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much.
And again, that was a motion to decline the offer, correct? Thank you.
Next up, Black Fly. Hello, please come forward, introduce yourself and the matter. Pardon me.
Good afternoon. My name is Linda Ebersole, and I actually live in Knoxville, Maryland, down in the southern part of the county. Some of you may remember Judy Warner. She's moved from the area. She had come before you all previously to get funding support. I'm here today to request permanent funding for the Washington County budget for FY21 and beyond, if possible, for the black fly treatment program along the Potomac River. As most of you are probably aware, concerned citizens and local politicians engaged with the state of Maryland regarding the black flies in southern Washington County and asked for a program similar to Pennsylvania's treatment program be implemented. In August 2017, a pilot program was put into place, and then on October 1st of 2019, Maryland Bill 1353 with the Department of Agriculture for nuisance insects became effective. The most important part of that one to understand is that the county and the municipalities would have to pay 50% of the cost associated to the program. In FY20, you all approved $36,000 for the program, which is basically a cost-sharing situation, and that was paid for out of the hotel taxes. I'd like to revisit that budget for just a second to explain some things that happened that we were not fully understanding at the time. It was our understanding that each treatment would cost $9,000. And the truth of the matter is that it's not really a fixed cost per treatment. It was an overall average based on the river flow. So if the river flow is high like it has been because of all the rain that we get, it's going to cost more, and depending on the time of the year, it will affect the cost of those treatments. So I just wanted to be sure that you're aware of that, because that was something that kind of came out in October when I started asking questions about if we had any treatments left. I had some assistance from Sarah Graves, also from Delegate Neil Parrott. It was difficult to get some of the answers that we wanted in the detail that we'd like to get them to understand what the state of Maryland was doing, but finally we kind of got the information that we needed. We now know what the actual costs were per treatment. And I'm coming here before you today to ask for $37,500 in the FY21 budget and beyond, and hope that you will take care of the citizens of southern Washington County. If you're not aware of what it's like for us, it's unbearable outside. These treatments have provided an immense amount of improvement to our quality of life outside. And if it's not approved, I'm afraid that it's going to impact the tourism, just the residents and everything else in our area. So I'm asking for approval.
Yeah, that was a question I had. Did you see a big difference?
Oh, we did.
Yeah.
I won't tell you that every single citizen said that they did. You always have an outlier, but for the most part, yes, all of the comments were completely positive. And I can't tell you, I've lived in that area for over 20 years, and it's made a huge improvement for us. And they were treating approximately once a month. And we had 3 treatments last year, and there's still 1 to be paid for in the spring.
You said beyond. Is this going to be a yearly treatment that has to be done?
Well, it would actually, we hope, would continue to be monthly, and then would continue each year after that. And for those of you that may not understand it, it's kind of a strange situation. The clean water is what has actually allowed them to breed in the Potomac River. So the fact that we've cleaned up our waterways has actually caused a negative impact in another way. So the BTI treatments take care of the larvae.
So this 37.5 is for 2021.
21, and I would love to see it become a part of the permanent budget if that's
Yep.
possible. If not, hey, I'll go for a year and we'll go from there.
I think it would be important to make it part of reoccurring, in the budget, because I think last year we ran into an issue, black fly season, spring, summer, fall, but the fiscal year starts July
Yes.
1st. So there's an issue about not being able to treat, half of the black fly season because the way our accounting cycle fell.
Right. If you
Yeah.
don't treat it soon enough, it doesn't affect the ones that have already come to life, or however you want to say it. It only affects the larva.
I'd be okay being a recurring budget item, but Sarah, I just would want you every year to remind us. Okay, sure. Notation that's there, because it may have ended, we don't know. Okay.
Right, or there may not be a match from the state, or conditions may change, right? Sure.
Commissioners have any other thoughts or comments with that? Approve?
If there wasn't a match, how would I'm all for it, by the way, but what if there wasn't a match, then what happens?
It would significantly change the cost, so.
But how would we vote on this?
Well,
Right now, we're only
bring
going
the
to approve up to,
information to us, and then we can decide.
we're only going to
Okay.
approve right now up to a certain amount on
Yep.
a basis, but I just asked you to come back every year to remind us of that.
I motion to approve.
Second, with the intent of making this likely a reoccurring
I
item.
agree.
Remind it yearly that it's still there.
Sure will.
We can All right, commissioners, first and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Sarah, for your help. You're welcome.
Next up, Sarah, draft one. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Afternoon.
Sarah Greaves, Chief Financial Officer,
And Kelsey Mace, Deputy Director of Budget and Finance.
here to present to you the first draft of the capital improvement plan. First of all, I'd like to thank all the staff, department heads, the CIP committee, and Kelsey and Misty Rosenberry, who have worked very diligently on this plan. The 10-year plan is developed each year, and it includes scheduling and financing of future community facilities such as public buildings, roads, bridges, parks, sewer projects, educational facilities. This plan is flexible, covers a 10-year period, with the first year, which is fiscal year 2021, being the capital improvement budget. Funds for each project are allocated from federal, state, and local sources. A primary purpose of the capital improvement program is to provide a means for coordinating and consolidating all departmental and agency requests into one document. Capital budget requests for this year were submitted on December 27th, 2019. The costs that were submitted that exceeded available funding sources was approximately $94 million. It is the CIP committee's responsibility to review all the requests that county departments and agencies submit. All projects are ranked based on established criteria for priority ranking. Considering our current and future needs as developed in the 10-year plan, available funding sources, and the results of the ranking, the CIP committee determines which capital projects best meet established criteria for the current year for the capital improvement plan. Not all projects can be funded due to funding constraints. The CIP committee is made up of 5 members: the CFO, the county administrator, the director of engineering, the director of planning, and the director of public works. First, I would like to take a moment to review the funding assumptions that were made to prepare this plan. And I'd like you to go to tab 1 in your binders that were just passed out. And I'd like you to turn to page 5. Funding sources in the capital improvement plan are budgeted each year in the year that they will be received. All potential funding sources are considered when developing the capital improvement plan. And as we look at this page, we can see the assumptions there for you. So bonds, tax-supported bonds, you can see first, approximately $12 million per year is assumed for the plan. This is very similar to what has been done in prior years. Self-supported bonds is the second line that you see. This funding source varies greatly from year to year based on project needs. So it is high for fiscal year 2021. That's mainly related to some water quality projects, the capacity management project and the Smithsburg wastewater treatment plant project. But you can see that funding source does fluctuate. It's based on the projects that are allocated to those years. The third revenue or funding source is speed camera fines. You can see that for 2021, it is assumed at $800,000. That amount is a net number representing the revenue less any expenditures related to the program. You can see that number goes down as the years progress and assumes a leveling out around $500,000. These are assumptions based on what actuals we see. They may be modified down the road, but this is what we're assuming to date. The fourth line is a very important one. It's the general fund contribution. This amount starts at $5 million for 2021 and incrementally increases throughout the 10-year period to $6 million in 2030. Other funds are considered with the funding sources. That would be any appropriations from the airport fund or the solid waste fund, any of those other funding sources that we have coming into the plan to pay for project costs. And then, of course, as always, we have our transfer tax and our excise tax assumptions. And we do have in this plan using an additional $500,000 from our reserves of transfer tax. This is just excess transfer tax that we have that we were able to allocate. I'm not sure exactly which project it's allocated to, but I think it's pavement maintenance and rehabilitation. So are there any questions on the funding assumptions that we've made for the plan?
Sarah, why are the APFO fees not included?
APFO fees are not budgeted in the plan unless we have identified specific fees for specific projects. But if we do get them, we could allocate them to either a road or a school, whatever they're accumulated for. Okay. The next tab I would like you to turn to would be tab 5. What you'll see in tab 5 is the debt capacity analysis. This is an analysis that's conducted annually and provides a method by which the county's debt position can be evaluated, tested for stress and affordability, and then compared to other jurisdictions. The analysis provides the county commissioners and the citizens a way to analyze the bond issuance, the effect that it has short-term and long-term. And it is based on debt ratios as compared to our peer group and our policy. So when we evaluate the debt, we do it in several different economic scenarios, a good economy, a poor economy, and how those debt ratios change between those economies, but also with our peers and with our policy. So the objective is in any economy, we don't want to exceed our peers and we don't want to exceed our policy. So that is how this is put together. And you can see the results here. You can see the assumptions in the center of the page if you have any questions on that. But basically, in the plan, we have $12 million in tax-supported bonds, which is very conservative based on the results of this analysis. If there are no questions on that, we can go to tab 6, which shows the anticipated operating costs associated with certain projects. This is very good information to be aware of. One of the costs that is on here I'd like to bring your attention to is the Police, Fire, and Emergency Services Training Facility. So it is anticipated that the completion of that project will increase operating costs by about $500,000 per year. We spoke a little bit about this last year. I know it was in our 5-year projection as well. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. Okay, so the 10-year plan totals $591.8 million, with 2021 representing $60.6 million. I'd like you to go ahead and turn to tab 7, which is the beginning of our discussion today, starting with the airport fund. The 10-year plan for airport is $32.5 million, with the 2021 request of $4.7 million. Keep in mind, the airport does receive $1 million in Federal Aviation Administration entitlement grants annually for maintaining 10,000 commercial passenger enplanements per year. In addition, HGR is highly dependent on the availability of discretionary funds. Airport projects are mostly funded through grants, so it makes the local contribution very small, roughly about 5% of the project cost, so keep that in mind. There are projects in this plan that if grant funding is not secured, the project will not move forward. The obligation does not necessarily shift to the county. If grant funding is not secured, they'll have to figure something else out. As you notice on your sheet here, you should be on page 7-1, there are 3 projects that are highlighted in orange. The reason they're highlighted in orange is because they're new from last year's plan. So we just wanted to identify them for you. All of the other projects you have probably seen before. So the new ones include the passenger boarding bridge, the taxiway F rehabilitation, and the wildlife assessment.
Let me ask a question, maybe I'm ahead of the game. Is the airport self-sufficient with the bonds, the grants, the employment?
The airport's operating budget is balanced right now without the use of general fund dollars. There is some general fund money allocated to capital projects. Yeah.
Sarah, on wildlife assessment,
Yes.
$100,000, is that just for the assessment just on the airport property? And then what would they be assessing? If there's too many deer or not too many deer?
I guess birds and deer and.
The description that's provided is that the FAA requires airport sponsors to maintain a safe operating environment, which includes conducting wildlife hazard assessments when deemed necessary by an inspector. I don't see Garrison here.
So is that the county's total bill there, $100,000, or is that also?
It is grant funded as well. There's a grant assumption, so the county's portion would be $5,000.
This assessment is mandated?
It does say that the FAA requires the assessment when it's deemed necessary by an inspector, so I'm assuming that may have happened. That's an assumption, though.
Was that 100,000 last year too?
This is a new project. It was not in here last year.
Oh, okay, because you got it highlighted. I get you.
Yes.
There you go, Terry. You can go hunting.
Well, it just amazes me how they're creative and how they come up with all of these expenses. I mean, you know if there's too much wildlife there or not.
As you guys look at the this page here, 7-1, I just want to explain one thing. You'll see there are 2 lines for each project. And the reason for that is what we wanted to show you on here is the request that was submitted by the department, and that's the first line that you see. So if we look at passenger terminal hold room expansion for 2021, $3.4 million is on the first line. That was what was requested by the department. The second line is any adjustments that occurred, and the second line represents the CIP committee's recommendation. So as you can see, there's been no change, and that's why you'll see the third line with the red indicates 0 change from what was requested. So some of these you'll see there are small changes. Passenger boarding bridge was originally requested in 2022. It moved over to 2021. I think that was the result of some additional grant funding that was secured. But it just shows you what was requested. The second line is what the CIP committee is recommending. And if there are no further questions for airport, we'll move on to bridges.
Yep. Okay, so if you'll turn to tab 8 in your binders, we'll move on. For bridges, the 10-year plan is at $13.7 million with a request of $1.8 million in FY 2021. There was some shifting here with projects between years based on where our available funding was, but no major changes to existing projects. Some projects that may have been added in 2030 may have been pushed out for further review due to our limited funding in that year. Is there any questions on the bridge projects?
Okay.
If not, you can move into your next tab for drainage. Drainage, 10-year plan is $13.5 million with a request of $1 million for '21. Major projects for '21 in drainage include funding for the stormwater retrofits project, which is a regulatory requirement imposed by the EPA and MDE. It includes the construction of stormwater management systems, including bioswales, biofilters, permeable pavements, ponds, wetlands, and et cetera, in roadways, parks, and other county properties to satisfy the NPDES requirements that are established by MDE. No changes were made to this category from what was submitted. Do you have any questions?
Okay, if not, we'd like you to turn to tab 10 for the Board of Education. 10-year cost is shown at $312.8 million with $21 million in fiscal year 2021. What you'll notice here is that the CIP committee did not change the project costs on this sheet. Rather than changing the project cost, they did change the project funding. Okay, and I will explain that here. So the Board of Education submits their capital improvement plan. In years past, the CIP committee may have changed and reprioritized their projects based on available funding from the county. This year, the county did assume in this plan $4 million as it had last year. So $4 million annual appropriation provided to the Board of Education for their capital projects is in each year. However, what you'll see if you look at the bottom half of this page under contributions, it's highlighted in yellow for your awareness. It shows the amount that's over the $4 million appropriation from the county. So that is in excess of what the county has in the plan. And in order to maintain this same capital schedule that has been provided by the Board of Ed, there would need to be a contribution from the Board of Education in that amount. If the Board of Education cannot provide that contribution, they may need to make changes to their plan, and our staff can help them do that if they reach out to us. Are there any questions for the Board of Education?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So our request for fiscal year 20, not our request, our amount that you are recommending for fiscal year 2021 is the same as was projected last year when we were working on our fiscal year 2020 budget?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Last year in the 2020 capital plan, we programmed $4 million annually to the Board of Education. If there's any change to that amount, the CIP committee would like to hear a recommendation from the board for a change if that's something that the board would consider.
So the figure that's mandated to us is what figure, what we have to pay? No.
Actually, that's just for the operating
Okay,
budget.
so this is, okay, gotcha.
This is separate. What we try to do is we try to provide funding to match the state dollars. And it also, I mean, there are times that we can't always do that because of funding constraints, as you know, and that has happened in the past. So what we tried to do was make a plan so that the Board of Education would know ahead of time what the county can afford, and that's where the $4 million came in. And so that's what remains in the plan today, as it was last year.
Since Dr. Michael formally came before us, would we be able to reply formally to him just as a courtesy, either in a letter, an email, a phone call?
Sure.
Just
Yes.
issue
Would you like me to respond
Stating that
to?
you all would be willing to work with his team to address.
Is there any consensus from the board to make a change to the plan as it sits today, to give staff or the CIP committee some additional direction?
Possibly.
I'm not ready today, but I'd like
Yeah,
to see
I mean, this is our first.
as our budget evolves.
And the other thing, and exactly as Commissioner Klein stated, the general fund revenues are not yet completed. And so there may be additional funding that comes into the capital plan, and the Board of Commissioners would be able to allocate that with the CIP committee to determine the most appropriate use for it.
As we get further along, I may want to see just these pages and the whole budget for Board of Education and us and what Dr. Michael spoke. Not that I just want to have a better understanding of exactly, once you get further along with your budget,
Okay,
and we got more facts and figures in front of us.
okay.
Because you're going to present this 2 more times?
Probably at least, yeah. Normally, whenever there are any even slight changes, we come in with a separate draft for you. And certainly if there are any changes recommended by the board, we'll make those and present them again. So yes.
Yeah, with 31 tabs, maybe we ought to break it up.
Well, there will definitely be at least one more draft because it'll change based on the appropriation from the general fund once we get in a good place with the general fund to understand how much revenue we have coming into the plan. Okay, so this is kind of our first look. We've assumed the $5 million in general fund appropriation as a baseline, and that's a healthy amount for our plan. We have a lot of needs that we can't provide for with tax-supported bonds and stuff like that, so you really need some cash coming into the plan for vehicles and stuff like that. So we've put that as a baseline. It may change.
Could I also get maybe a history of what, over the last maybe 5 years? You don't have to go back 25 years, 5 years, of our contribution to capital projects for the Board of Education, just to see. 'Cause I'm under the impression that we have increased that steadily over the last couple years.
Okay, I can provide that to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, the next tab, tab 11, is Hagerstown Community College. The 10-year budget's $20.7 million with $3.1 million for fiscal year 2021. There were a couple changes here made. For instance, there were projects that were moved up and back between a couple years just based on funding levels. You'll see that, and you'll see those changes and the differences marked in red. Nothing substantial. However, the solar carport project was removed from the plan due to funding limitations. Again, you can see there's 3 new projects on here from last year. The solar carport project is the last project in the plan for a total of $4.8 million, and that was removed due to funding limitations. I did want to note for the board and also for HCC, if they are tuned in, I did also send them an email as well. The contributions that are highlighted in yellow here, so largely we kept their request the same. And what we tried to do was create a budget for them so that they would have an understanding of how much money they could expect from the Board of County Commissioners. And that funding level has been about $600,000 annually in this plan. And so that helps them to plan their projects for what they can expect from the county. So anything that exceeded that amount that was kept in the plan was pushed to the contributions level as well. So contribution funding as well. So you can see that in 27 and 29, those amounts there.
Highlighted in orange is the new projects, correct?
Highlighted in orange are new projects, yes.
Am I reading that correct? The air conditioning project is, and there is a project
That is being funded. Yes.
Was that moved up in time?
The air conditioning project, I think, has been a request from HCC for many years. It has moved up, and that project is $1.1 million, with $600,000 being provided by HCC and $500,000 being provided by the county.
And that's for this budget year.
That's for fiscal year 2021, yes, starting in July.
Cool in there for all those grants.
I know it's a project that everyone has had interest in, so you're welcome.
Right, so if you'll move into your next tab, we'll talk about the public libraries. The total cost for the 10-year plan is $2.8 million, which is primarily the Hancock replacement project, which has recently been completed, however, is not in our plan until 2022. The Board of County Commissioners has agreed to fund up to $1 million of reimbursement for this project. If there are no questions, we can move into the next tab, which is the general government. The 10-year cost is $10.8 million, of which is $1.1 million for fiscal year 2021. There are no major changes in this category. However, funding was restored over last year for the general fund contingency, which represents $100,000 per year. As we move through the operating budget, additional funding may be allocated to the general equipment and vehicle replacement based on the funding requests that are made in the operating budget.
Last year, some of those budgets were drastically reduced, and county departments went without equipment replacement, so that may be why there's a need for additional funding to go to those projects.
Okay, moving into your next tab is Parks and Recreation. The 10-year cost is $8.2 million, with $600,000 budgeted for fiscal year '21. Most of the projects here represented are POS funding, which is 90-10 split between grant and local. One change that was made to the submission was to combine all the Antietam Creek Water Trail projects into one single project, which you can see is the sixth project down, or the second one highlighted in orange. This project combined the three below. 16 new projects were created in this category overall. This is an attempt to better program expected projects. In the past, there may have only been a plan for 1 or 2 years, and what we're trying to do is get a better 5-year projection. While there are many new projects and $600,000 in costs, the 21 local funding is only $142,000. Is there any questions?
Okay. If we can have you turn to tab 15, we'll begin our conversation on public safety. Public safety plan, the 10-year plan is $32.1 million, $3.7 million in the fiscal year 2021. Major changes include $610,000 more over that 10-year period for funding for various detention systemic projects over what was approved last year, so that's something to note. We do have a systemic schedule that was provided for that cost. Increased project costs for the Police, Fire, and Emergency Services Training Facility by $500,000 due to the likelihood of additional grant funds from the Governor's Office, making the total state funding $1 million for that project. There was restoration over last year's budget for police vehicles by about $1.3 million over that 10-year period, and for emergency services equipment and vehicles of about $900,000 over the 10-year period. So as you can recall, last year, some of those budgets were reduced based on funding constraints because we're trending lower than anticipated income tax revenues. So we had made adjustments to the plan. Our income tax revenue came through higher than expected, and so some of that restoration you can see in the 21 budget. There were 4 new projects added. The last one on the page is not highlighted in orange, but I do believe it's a new project, or at least a new one to discuss. So the first one, the 911 Center building and expansion, you can see that there with a cost of $1.8 million. $350,000 of that 1.8 request is provided as an assumption in grant funding. This project is requested to expand the existing 911 Emergency Communications Center to accommodate 24 dispatch stations and would also benefit the Emergency Operations Center. I have discussed this project with staff, and they have stated while it may expand to seat 24 seats, they do not anticipate the need to hire those additional personnel in the near future. For this reason, there is minimal operating cost associated with this project.
Ask a question?
Yes.
The 911 center building expansion. I thought the long-term plan was to have that housed at the Emergency Services Training Center, the 911 operations. Is that not the case? I thought we were hoping that that would be a large campus for all of those related activities and services.
I think Commissioner Kiefer, that was we discussed that in the CIP committee, and we think that's probably the long-term plan. But we've been in this building for 10 years now, and when we moved in, we were probably outgrown it at the time. So the short term would be to rehab this, and then probably maybe 12 to 15-year plan long-term to move to the training facility.
Okay, thank you.
The second project that is new is the Class A burn building. Total cost is $1 million, but what you'll see in the plan is $500,000, and that's the county portion that the city of Hagerstown has requested. A facility that provides live fire training is essential to the training needs of emergency responders. The current Class A building on Bowman Avenue cannot continue to meet those needs due to age and structural limitations. So this is a new request in the 2021 plan.
So have we paid to use the burn building in the past?
I don't think we paid to use it, but I think it has been utilized by county emergency personnel, right?
And it was for free then?
Jonathan Hart, Assistant Director in the Division of Emergency Services. Yes, they do not charge us to use the facility currently.
But now they will. Or is that us? Is that their request to us?
Their request is that we pay for 50% of this facility because, probably because of the amount that the county utilizes it. The Police, Fire, and Emergency Services Training Facility won't have a burn building built in the near term, right?
Not in the near term, but even in the long term, it is very unlikely that we will be able to use any type of burn structure down on Sharpsburg Pike to burn Class A materials, in other words, normal wood to simulate a building fire. We will probably have some type of structure down there eventually for burning, but it will burn gas. It does not give you firefighters a good simulation of what it's really like to fight a fire.
Demanding some of that be switched to gas for training and safety? Is that why there's?
Excuse me, sir?
Isn't the reason why it's being moved forward to being treated by gas? Is that a federal regulation, MIMS training
It's not, it's
requirements?
just-
What is causing that change from fire to heat?
We imagine that its proximity to residences, the facility's proximity to residences, potential zoning implications will not allow us to burn anything that's going to create a lot of smoke in the area. So that's why burn facilities, generally speaking, don't have a lot of opposition to something that's burning natural gas, which doesn't create any smoke.
How often do we use the Hagerstown's burn building?
We being the county,
Yeah.
For clarification, how often do we use it for burning, or how often do we use the
How
facility?
often do we, I'm just trying to see, 600,000.
Right.
Did we go there twice a year or 50 times a year?
We probably go there on a weekly, definitely on a monthly basis, but it may not be for burning because we do a lot of things down there. We do confined space.
Well, training, and you need that facility to train. Is that what you're? So if we go there 12 times a year?
I would say that's probably, and we also do things with Hagerstown Fire Department. So like, our
Okay,
special
gotcha.
operations, we burn with them, go to exercises with them now.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
their asset, but it's a joint use facility.
Correct. And we would, I think it's Director Hayes's intent to create an MOU that basically establishes what are the parameters for use, how do we schedule it, all those types of things.
And no charge. And no charge to us, the county.
No recurring operating charge, just the investment here.
Right. I'm not familiar with
But
any
I'm saying
recurring
that'll
charge.
be included in the MOU.
Right. Well, right.
Not that we know of. There wouldn't be any annual operating costs associated with the building, right?
No, the only cost that I'm aware of is the cost associated
Okay, so
with constructing the
Yeah, the
facility.
only point that I'm trying to make is once we support this, there will not be any fees charged to the county to.
Use of the facility.
Correct.
That's my understanding.
That's my understanding.
We'll confirm that for you.
Thank you. Right, what's next?
All right.
Thank you, John.
The next project on your sheet is a large one, $7 million project. It's called P25 Public Safety Radio Communication System Upgrade. You'll see it as $700,000 per year, or roughly that, except for the first year, which was reduced to $200,000. because of the structure of a lease over a 10-year period, but it still is a $7 million project. And what the project will do is upgrade the system's core components to a Phase 2 compatibility for the P25. Basically, what that means to us is a radio communication system that is like infrastructure on the towers. So it's necessary for communications, for radio communications for first responders. The current system that we have is approximately 12 years old. This is the first time this has shown up in the plan. I believe we currently have an agreement for maintenance through 2023. So what you'll see here is $200,000 provided in 2021 for costs associated with a professional who can help to assess different proposals for this type of system. I'm aware of 2 companies, I think right now, that would be able to do the work. Something that has been on my mind is that this is a large project to be new and included in the plan. And what I would like the commissioners to be aware of is that costs related to this sort of infrastructure upgrade may not go away after this 10-year plan. Who knows how long that system is going to be viable for? If our current one is 12 years old and now they're looking to have additional costs associated with an upgrade to that, to new systems that come online, and the compatibility, connectivity, this may be a recurring cost that the county sees. Maybe this system will last it will last 10 years if we're going to pay for it over 10 years, but maybe it will last 15, maybe 20, but I'm not sure that the county knows as things change and communication changes what we may expect for the future. So I think that's something important to note. And Mark Mades is the lead on this project, if you'd like him to come up and discuss it further.
Please come forward.
Thanks, Mark.
Mark Mades, Director of Wireless Communications. Any questions?
Just a brief oversight
Can
overview.
you, yeah, like in layman's
I mean, this
terms,
being-
because it's hard, like P25,
Basically, what you have is a radio network, just like a computerized network. 12 years on a network is a long time. We're running Windows 7 based computers on this network. So what happens is we have to go to a Phase 2, which takes us from frequency division multiplexing to time division multiplexing. It's a standard that's coming out. Everybody's been pushed towards it. And this is where a lot of the hardware upgrade comes in due to this change.
Was there a committee, Mark, that voted on moving this forward with Dave Hayes and the sheriff?
Yes, the radio,
And someone from IT?
we have Josh O'Neill, who was a deputy director at the time, was a member. Myself, Dave Hayes, Sheriff Mullendore, Ron Witt at the time was the chairman, so he was a non-voting member.
I guess the real truth is that this is be ongoing for 100 years. I mean,
You're always going to have,
Yeah,
if you
'cause
want
this'll-
communications, you're always going to have the network.
yeah, this will be a rotary phone in 2030.
Right, and that's
Right.
kind of why, I made the comment that I did is to, we see 700,000 in there annually right now. We have it over a 10-year period, but, in 2031 and 2032, we still expect there to be some cost associated with it, at least that we'll have to put in reserve so that when it's time to upgrade, we have the funds to do so, and it's not a shock to the plan.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. The last project that you see on the page is the Patrol Services relocation renovation. This is a $6.5 million project, and It does have funding shown in 2024 of $500,000. This is directly related to speed camera revenue assumption that we have in the plan. Currently, speed camera revenues are being provided to the Police, Fire, and Emergency Services Training Facility. The last year of that funding is in 2023. So as you can see, 2024, we have directed the speed camera funding towards this project. In hopes that over time it would build up and provide some funding towards the project construction, which we don't have in the plan until 2030. So you can see there's $500,000 being built up through that year. Are there any questions on that revenue? And it's been programmed towards a law enforcement project as it currently is, and not in operations. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so moving into railroad, the 10-year plan for railroad crossings is $1.4 million, and it has no changes over the FY20 approved plan. So if you'll move into your next tab into road improvement, the 10-year road improvement budget is $96.7 million, of which $12.2 million is requested for 21. Aside from shifting project costs from one year to another, not substantially changing projects, other changes include additional funding for the pavement maintenance and rehab program. Once revenues are drafted for the general fund, this project may be considered for additional funding. Funding was also added to the highway vehicle equipment over the 10-year period, adding several $100,000 per year. A new project to be noted here is for a salt storage structure for $350,000 to be put at the central location. Currently, the salt is not under a structure and is not protected from the elements. Is there any questions for road improvement?
The pavement maintenance and rehab program, is that the line item we draw from for like our annual chip seal, tar and chip
Yes.
projects? Okay. Tar and stone.
Okay, so if you can turn to tab 18, this is for the solid waste fund. The 10-year project cost is $7,373,000, of which is for 2021. One new project was requested here, which is for the 40 West security upgrades. You see that highlighted in orange. And that is for employee safety and to prevent vandalism or theft. And so that was the only new project. If you have any questions on that, Dave Mason is here. No? Okay. Moving on. Oh, yeah.
Moving on into transit, the 10-year cost of the plan is $7.1 million, with $500,000 in fiscal year 21. There were no major changes for this category. However, there is a new project added for support vehicles in the amount of $80,000 to replace 2 transit vans. Projects in the transit fund are funded 80 federal, 10 state, 10 local. The local contribution for 21 is $54,000.
Okay, if there are no further comments on those, we can move to tab 20 and finish up with water quality. There are 3 funds here from water quality: the utility fund, sewer fund, and the water fund. The utility fund is first, and projects total $2.2 million for the 10-year plan, with $180,000 of that in fiscal year 2021. The largest change from last year is for additional funding related to lab equipment, and that is for a gas, and I hope I say this right, chromatograph, which is critical to lab operations. The current piece that we have is outdated, no longer being manufactured. If a failure were to occur, it would be very difficult, maybe even impossible, to get replacement parts for it. And without this piece of equipment, water quality would have to send out their samples to other labs for analysis. So that is the change here. That's why it's included. Other projects you are probably familiar with, and they have not changed. Are there any questions for utility fund? In the same tab, just flip the page to 20-2. There you'll see the sewer plan. $25.3 million with a request of $9.9 million for '21. This is mainly due to the Smithsburg wastewater treatment plant upgrade and the capacity management project. The capacity management project did increase by $2 million over last year's based on the most recent engineer's estimate. The main reason for this change was due to a redesign of the gravity and force main because of the need to relocate it. And Mark Bradshaw's here if you need to hear anything from him. I think there were intentions to purchase a piece of property that fell through, and that was why it had to be redesigned. Loans from MDE are being requested for the capacity management project and the Smithsburg wastewater treatment plant upgrade as well. Yeah. And if those loans are secured, the interest rate will be much less than the county issuing bonds. So currently we have the assumption that bonds would be issued to fund these projects. We did submit an application for MDE loan. I just want you to be aware of that. And we won't know if we have been approved for that until I think around May. Any questions on those projects? If not, flip your page to 20-4. This is the water fund and what we'll be finishing up with today. It has remained consistent from last year. 2021 costs of $420,000. One new project includes the Cascade Town Center water system improvements. This project is required for compliance with MDE, and it will upgrade the well houses and reservoirs. Any questions there? The binders that you have in front of you, after these summary sheets that we've reviewed today, each project has an individual sheet that gives details about the project, a description, justifications for the project, and the funding assumptions or sources for that project. So you have all of this to reference if you have any questions, or you can certainly reach out to me or Kelsey, and we'll be happy to get you answers. Anything as we finish up? Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, next on the list is to go into closed session. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.